A bill to require a photo ID from the person picking up a Schedule II prescription drug passed the Virginia House this week. Delegate Matt Lohr's bill came at the request of the Harrisburg Police Department. Schedule II drugs are the most addictive and include morphine, oxycodone, and methadone. The bill requires a pharmacist to require a photo ID from the person picking up the prescription. This information will be recorded in a logbook or computer program to maintain a database of those people picking up the prescriptions. And joining us now to discuss the bill is Lieutenant Boshart of the Harrisburg Police Department, and by phone is Republican Delegate Matt Lohr of Broadway. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Now, Delegate, why do you feel this bill is necessary?
Well, like you said, the idea came to me last spring by the Harrisburg Police Department, and they were very concerned with the high number of cases that they were seeing relating to prescription drug abuse, the Schedule II drugs, which are the most addicting. And what was happening is people were stealing or forging prescriptions. They would drop them off at pharmacies and put them in fake names, and then they would go from pharmacy to pharmacy around town, and there was no trail to see who was actually picking them up. And so this bill actually eliminates that problem because it says the person who picks up the Schedule II drug, not necessarily the patient, but the person who picks it up, they're the ones that have to show the photo ID, and that way there is a paper trail that will be recorded so that in the event there's questions, law enforcement would have the opportunity to take a look at those logs and see if they can track it down. What I think it's going to do more than anything, it's going to reduce crime before it happens, because it's going to be pretty tough for someone to forge a prescription and pick it up without having a trail there for someone to follow them. So my hope is the legislation will reduce the crime before it ever happens.
Lieutenant, how big of a problem is this in the city?
Well, we're seeing an increase in the number of cases that we're trying to deal with, and one of the things that with the biggest problem behind this is a lot of times these crimes are going on for a period of time before we even find out about it. So they've already been going from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy. So one of the things that we've done, and one of our investigators, Investigator Mike Spiegel, actually is the one who's really doing a lot of work with this, has done an excellent job in researching and all that. But what we found out was that by going to the pharmacies, we're already finding out that they've already been there numbers of times. So then we're trying to figure out who they are and who was there. So that's one of the things that this bill will enable us to do is actually be able to trail it and actually find out who it is that's going around and actually picking up these drugs. Not necessarily that they're the ones that forged it or anything, but it's another lead that we have to follow.
Lieutenant, is this something where is it more an abuser using it for themselves, or is it a way to make more money, or both?
It could be both. We see that there is a higher number, and predominantly in teens, actually using prescription drugs and abusing prescription drugs. So throughout the nation, you're seeing an increase in that. And so it's not only a matter of using them themselves, but also there's a black market out there for them. So they're actually taking it and then selling them as well.
Delegate, this is, I guess, in a way, it's somewhat similar to the requirement for pseudoephedrine medications over the counter, where now, I guess because they can make meth with that, that came a few years ago requiring, I believe, ID also? Absolutely.
What we tried to do is base this legislation very similarly to the legislation that we passed a few years ago to help crack down on the pseudoephedrine abuse, and it works kind of the same way. Basically, the log books will be done the same way, and they can photocopy an ID or scan it or actually enter it into a computer system or record it in a log book. So we try to make it as easy on the pharmacy as possible, and we even have a clause in that says if the pharmacist knows the person personally, they just have to enter their name and information. They don't have to produce a photo ID if it's someone that they know. So I want to make sure that it's certainly not a law aimed at really making a lot of work for the pharmacists. We want to make it as easy as possible on them, and by patterning it after what's already being done, I think we were able to address most of those concerns.
All right, and as far as the community, how does this impact the larger community?
I think what we see is when you're looking at the number of crimes that are committed as far as the ability to come up with the money to pay for these drugs on the black market and so forth. So what we try to do is you try to look at the impact it's going to have on the community. I think overall it's good. We've been working with the pharmacies. The pharmacies are very cooperative, working with us. We want to make sure, as Delegate Lohr said, it's not an impact on them.
All right, Lieutenant Boshart of the Harrisburg Police Department and Delegate Matt Lohr joining us from Richmond. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now let's send it to Mel.